Welcome back into Rugged Wisdom. Today we're talking with Bryant Barnhill. He's a NASCAR driver. He drives cars fast. It's a great interview. Looking forward to it right here on Rugged Wisdom.
Welcome to the Rugged Wisdom Podcast, hosted by myself, Scott Johnson, and my buddy, Joe Wedra. Join us each week as we discuss timeless truths, share great stories, and create momentum in our daily lives. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share wherever you enjoy this podcast. We greatly appreciate it. And now, let's get on with the show.
Welcome back into Rugged Wisdom. Joe Wedra, Scott Johnson. First guest. We're pumped. Hope you are. Scott, lead us off.
I am. So, Bryant Barnhill, man, glad to have you here,
What's
dude.
up, man?
Welcome back.
Yeah, welcome to the table, man. Welcome to the table. So, look, you came straight from the garage.
Yeah,
right.
Straight from the hot, sweaty shop.
That's
it.
it.
All the blood, sweat, and tears are all made there.
That's it. So, I know it's springtime, but it's still hot in the shop, right?
Man, yeah, people can say what they want, but, just the difference between coming from North Carolina back here to South Carolina, the heat's just different.
Yeah.
It's just different.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. All right, so Bryant Barnhill is with us on this podcast episode of Rugged Wisdom because we're here to bring you in because you do something that we think is really cool and you do something for a living that's really, really cool. First and foremost, man, just respect you as a dude, good friend. But yeah, you do something that a lot of guys, I think, probably wish they could do.
I don't do.
You don't. I mean, we all turn left and right, but you turn a lot of left.
Yeah, a lot. Occasionally, if I get the opportunity, I'll make a couple right turns, but I prefer the left.
Yeah, right turns are more of a corrective.
Yeah, it's more of a corrective thing, or it's just like a hustle.
Yeah, exactly.
Something probably didn't go well if you're turning right. Most of the time.
Sometimes. I mean, that or somebody else didn't do something right.
Exactly. So, Brian, we brought you in and to talk about not about who you are and your faith and kind of how you walk that out. But, I mean, let's get everybody up to speed about you and what you do. I mean, you drive fast cars, fast trucks for a living. That's your job. So tell us, man, I mean, you've been doing this for a while. So let's go back a little bit about how this started because you didn't start out driving NASCAR trucks or cars or Infinity. You started on dirt track or at a go-kart. So take us back there. So how does one even find themselves on this journey?
I mean, honestly, it goes back, for me, it was my family. My family's had not a very long history. Like my grandpa didn't grow up in a racing family or something like that. He was the first one in our family even getting involved with it at all. And just when I came along, my uncle and my dad were racing, and the foundation was already there. And then next thing I know, we're at Old Conway Cartway, and my grandpa's lying about how old I am so I can race.
Yeah. So how old were you at that time?
I was 3.5. I was almost 4.
I was thinking like
that.
7 and 8.
Me too.
Oh no,
pretending to be 10 or something like that.
no, yeah.
Right. So preschool.
Yeah, it's funny. No, I didn't really think about it till when I'd casually, tell people in the truck shop, oh no, I got started when I was like 3.5, and they're like, so you mean to tell me before you learned to read or write, you knew how to race?
Yeah.
And I was like, I never thought of it like that. I was like, I guess I did.
Yeah, that's pretty dope.
Oh yeah, no, it's crazy, but
so when someone gets started in the kart series, that take you through your kind of childhood years, and then so how long were you in the kart series before you got into a larger vehicle?
I ended up getting into a larger vehicle when I was about 11 years old, a full body kind of stock car over at Myrtle Beach. But from that time where I was 3 to 11, at the time you didn't have. It was really weird. I didn't know how it was elsewhere till I branched out. And, you're talking to guys, from the West Coast or from North Carolina or whatever, and you're telling them that you just casually grow up racing against 40-year-old men or what. It was all about weight and motor. It was never about how old you were. So just you kind of grew up from that, and then luckily we got out of it just in time, for real cost to be effective in it, and then. Next thing I know, I'm 12, 13 years old in a full-body stock car racing at Myrtle Beach. So it was a little bit of a transition.
Now, I know that's been a big part of your story as a family because Myrtle Beach as a racetrack was up until 2 years ago when they was at the last race there. I think about 2 years ago. It was a landmark, right? So I know that piece of real estate for you and your family, that's sacred ground.
Oh, it is.
Right, to some degree. Myrtle Beach, some people may not know this, was a major, I won't say a stopping point, but a checkpoint on the way up the ladder for a lot of big name racers, right?
Oh yeah,
a lot of people come through Myrtle Beach.
Absolutely, and even in its final days, it was one of the most well-known short tracks in North America, which is crazy. I think it shocked a lot of people in my racing community. And I still have people coming up to me all the time, and they'll say something to me about it and how much it meant to them. And, this is somebody that they would travel all the way from Virginia to come run there on a weekly basis. Well, I think
it's like, in a way I use the football analogy. People don't know how centrally located a lot of football culture is to the South versus, just around the United States. And we know that to be true. But especially in the sport of stock car racing, obviously coming out of the a lot of North Carolina, that kind of place into South Carolina. Like this is, I guess some people don't really realize it's like the hotbed. It's the birthplace, for a lot of when it comes to stock car racing. Obviously, there's other racing that comes from other places, but this is kind of a birthplace. So seems like you were at the right time, the right place, in the right cars.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's a part of it.
Oh yeah. No, it was something for me that I take a lot of pride in, because my years I did race at Myrtle Beach, it wasn't the best of equipment. It wasn't, we were, high dollar in it. We were just literally, even in my final days racing with the late model, which was the top division, you're just doing the best you can so you can take what money you make to roll it over into the next race.
Right.
Yeah. And, it was something for me that it was such a blessing that I never realized until I made that future step of moving up the ladder and going through the approval process, having that on my resume. Not every late model guy can get approved to go race a 7/8 mile track, in Iowa, but it was even to the disbelief of the team that I was racing for.
Yeah.
They were surprised that I got approved.
Yeah.
And Mr. Bodine, who was doing the approval process at the time, he said, it's because of your history of racing at Myrtle Beach Speedway that we have no problem with approving you. And to me, that kind of threw me back. And then over time, having people come up to me and say things about how great the racing was there and how well it was awesome.
So Myrtle Beach kind of had a culture of its own.
Its own thing.
It's its own thing. So I want to jump into this because, I think this is what a lot of guys who listen to this, they want to know. They ask, so what's it like to go fast? A couple questions, right?
Yeah.
I know people ask this all the time, right? So what's the fastest you've been, and which track scares you the most?
Oh, man. I know the fastest I've ever been was, a lot of people would think like a track like Daytona, but we have a lot of restrictions there, and definitely for the best.
Yeah.
So, we only go 190 something there.
Only.
Yeah.
190.
And then, Pocono was about 200.
Yeah.
We were getting way up there, and it was pretty crazy. But, honestly, there's a track that just kind of scared me.
So it's not the speed that scares you.
No,
it's the situation, right?
It's a situation.
Yeah.
Like for me, if there's certain tracks that if I am in really bad equipment, which sometimes I was, it can get sketchy.
Yeah. So what's your favorite track? Like which track? As far as, let's say, on what people would know tracks, they know larger tracks.
Yeah.
Like which is the track you like the most?
I really liked Pocono, and I really like Dover. Dover, you're dropping 10 floors to the bottom and then driving up 10 floors, and you're just doing it. It just speeds, and you're barely cracking the throttle and just kind of just back in it, and then you're just going back up, and it's just nonstop, and it's just roller coaster.
That's pretty cool, because now we haven't said your age yet. I mean, people we haven't revealed that. We just said people are like, man, this kid's been racing since 3.5. How old? So you're 24.
Yep, 24.
24, right? So how old are you?
I'm 24.
Yeah, so you're the same age.
We are. I just have a question. To hit those speeds, right?
Yeah.
First of all, is there a difference in 180 and 200? At what point do you start to get? What's that balance of okay, I'm starting to go fast?
I'm gonna be honest with you. There's a stillness, and
Really?
And it's really weird for me to put it in this kind of context, but it's the only way I can describe it. Especially out on it's not like you're trying to hit, 160 in your car going down 22 or something like that. It's you're on a racetrack and you don't feel the speed, but you get to a point where the motor tunes itself out. The air, you're just like the steering wheel just feels light. The car, everything just feels light, and it's very
Zen-like. I've heard
Yeah.
I've heard some racers say it's like a Zen moment.
It is.
like at a flow state. It's like it's when it all clicks, right?
Yeah, and it's one of those things that you don't like. The motions and everything around you just slows down, but it's just still. Everything's still.
I haven't driven a car, but I did a ride along at I think we were at Charlotte. And I think like 160, 170 they put you on there. And I do remember that feeling of just at that where it's different. Like the chain link fence is no longer a chain link fence.
No.
It's just like a blur. And distances kind of get compressed. The engine, it's kind of like cutting your grass when you kind of get that riding a tractor, you kind of that everything just kind of the vibration, the sound.
You're just in the moment.
Yeah, you're in the moment.
Yeah.
That's the beautiful thing.
It's interesting, everything too, when you do that, everything is so big. People don't realize how big it is when you're there. Even a small, like Darlington I go to a lot, and you go on the track and it's still just massive. Everything is big, so you don't really feel like that. My other question, we were talking about your age. Doing these things, going those speeds, and you're 12, 13 years old. I mean, right? Because in other sports, you play baseball. It's like, oh, I moved up to the 90-foot diamond, right? That's the big thing. It's like, oh, I'm throwing from 60 feet 6 inches now instead of 48. Like, that's the
Pitcher's
big deal.
throwing 70.
Yeah,
Oh,
you're like,
man, he's
holy
picking it up.
cow.
Picking it up.
Right. But you're
Yeah.
not doing that. You're 12 years old rolling, speeds that none of us will ever go in our lives. What is that like when all of your other friends are playing football, playing baseball, playing basketball, and you're just like, oh, yeah, I'm cruising 180 this weekend?
I mean, honestly, for me, I was still doing those things with, I was still playing basketball, I was still playing travel baseball, travel basketball, and, I was doing those things. I was playing sports in school. So it's something that it was just like, there's two different parts of my life when it comes to that. And it was just like, I never really talked about it. I never really, if someone asks me, I'll answer their question and whatnot. But for the most part, especially with friends, at school and stuff, it was something I just, they knew it's something I did, but the deeper level of it, they didn't really understand and know. They're like, oh,
Sounds like you
racist.
compartmentalized it a fair amount.
Is that intentional? Or something just came about?
For me, it was originally unintentional, but over time, I think, and I got to give my mom the best shout out ever because she called me out on it, and she called me out on it probably the best way ever. I'm not defined as Bryant Barnhill, the race car driver.
Right.
I'm defined by Bryant Barnhill, son of, born again Christian, I'm defined by my faith.
Yeah.
And, for me, that kind of took a different turn for me.
Right.
Whereas, and I've never been really one that's just like walking around, like, going into a restaurant or something and be like, hey, I'm you know what I mean?
I drive a car.
You can look me up. Yeah. No,
I'm on the internet.
Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do have your own Wikipedia page, right?
You know what's crazy? I didn't know about that till like last year.
Really?
Yeah. And then I kind of hated it at the time because Cameron, like Bailey, he thinks it's funny now.
Yeah.
So if we go over to a friend's house or something, if they have like an Alexa or whatever, he'll be like, hey, watch this. And he just knows it like messes with
That's
me.
hilarious.
But
Yeah, the internet's wild, man. You never know what the Chinaman and Russian man who's keeping tabs on you. That's
I know.
Exactly right.
That's awesome. Now, we said, we have you on the podcast today because we want to talk about something you do that's pretty awesome, and the fact that you, drive fast trucks, fast cars, and we'll say that right now. I mean, you are, you've driven for as far as the truck series as well. Real quick question, just AB, would you rather drive the truck or the car?
Hands down the truck.
The truck.
The truck.
Real quick, why?
Honestly, just because it was more of a driver's, this past probably 10 years in the sport of NASCAR, you're dealing with a lot of aerodynamics and you're battling the air between vehicles and stuff like that. And when you had something like the truck, I kind of felt like I could, for someone who doesn't have a wide verse, history of working with that, it allowed you to push the limits more than you would in a car or, any other type of vehicle, really.
Yeah, those trucks are set up so. I don't think people understand
how.
Oh no, I don't think people really grasp how that truck is set up from the Nissan they jump in.
Oh yeah,
from the dealership, right? Yeah, the camber, how the truck literally is set.
Oh yeah,
so different.
I couldn't tell you how many times people have looked at my left front tire, at the racetrack or at a meet and greet or something, and they're like, "Is that thing broken? Like, is that broke?"
It looks
like it's reversed.
That's so funny. It looks like it shouldn't work.
Yeah,
and that's what makes it work.
Yeah,
that's what I love about it. Now, I know Joe's got some questions that we were talking about this today because you guys are the same age. And what I love about this, you're 24.
Yep.
I'm 43, going on 44 this year. So, I know we were kind of talking about this off air about just what it's like to be 24 years old, and that's what I really want to dive into here, because I think it's rad that you drive cars, that you drive trucks, and I mean that's super rad. But like you said, what your mom said, that's not who you are at the end of the day. It's part of it, but ultimately not who you are. And so I want to dive into this. Like, what is it like to be 24 years old, walking out your faith in that arena, and not just that arena, but culture at large?
And a culture, too, that is just so counter to the way that you and I would say, want to live.
Yeah.
I mean, I say, this is how I want to live. Everyone else looks at you like you're crazy. And it's well, we don't do that anymore. You hear that a lot, too, where it's like, I don't do that anymore. Or it's like, oh, that's the way they used to live, right? That's the way my granddaddy lived, right? But you don't do that anymore. You're 24 in 2023. How difficult is it? And I kind of have this thought process of, the way I think, and I'm just old school, right? I have this thought, and I'm sure it kind of goes through your mind a little bit. But, I mean, how difficult is it to live a life that you want to live, is, we believe is the way we're called to live in this culture?
Yeah, for me, I battled with it a lot. Like, early on, you're 17, 18 years old out there in the world, and it's not just you're going to college or doing anything like that. You're in an industry in a whole nother state by yourself, trying to find your way and make ends meet, and you really battle it because a big part of you wants to fit in, and a big part of you don't want to stand out in the wrong kind of a way. But as time moved on, one of the biggest things that I've come to know for myself is, what the world says and everything, they're going to say what they're going to say. But the impact I have on the person next to me, that's going to last a lot longer than anything that's written on the internet or anything out there that someone may say. Yeah. And so, for me, I've wanted my character and my faith to stand out the most, when they're like, well, why is he working harder? Why is he doing this? Is because, he, wants to prove everybody wrong, or he wants to do this. I mean, of course I do, but, Jesus gave his all. I feel like the least I can do is give my all, in everything that I do, and let that be the light that shined.
Right.
Isn't that funny that work ethic has kind of become the standout factor of,
like,
right? Like, even that is, it sounds strange, but work ethic is almost countercultural now. Where sometimes it's don't you believe that?
This is where it's a cultural. This is an age gap thing for me.
Honestly, for me, it's not necessarily even an age gap thing, because for me, like, I know some people that are younger than me that they still had that same work ethic that I grew up with. That it was just nobody really told you to do that. It was just like
do it.
It was just you just do that. And then I moved to North Carolina, and I'm meeting these people from like all over, and they didn't understand that. And I feel like there's a lot of factors in it, and I feel like it's a gap that shouldn't be there, but it was put there unintentionally. But over time, it's become more recognized. And
where do you see it though? Like, where do y'all? Where do we see it? I mean, it's one for me to point it out but then I'm like I'm the older guy who's like just poking fun at the young kids, right? But I'm asking you guys, two 24-year-old dudes, like, so where do you see it?
I mean, you speak on it too, Bryant, but in my opinion, you walk through this world, and when you see somebody I just got out of college in 2019, it's almost like there's a percentage of people who work really hard, but they're like the weird ones almost.
Yeah.
Where it's like, my dad, my granddaddy, that was the bare minimum. Like working hard was the bare minimum.
Sure.
Now it's if you work. I always say it's a joke, but like to have success nowadays, like just work a little bit harder than you might want to, and you're a hard worker all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And I just see it. College campus was a good example of that, and I'm curious where you see it. But for me, it's like, man, like working hard used to just be the standard, and now it's like, man, well, if that kid's a hard worker, he's the top 1% of what he does.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just something I've observed.
I mean, for me, I've kind of noticed like that opposite effect as far as like people. I consider is the get rich quick. If I put in just this little amount of work, I expect to be rewarded off of my hard work.
Right.
And when that hard work isn't rewarded from your actions, people get frustrated, they get mad, and then they no longer want to work hard. Yeah. But for those who kind of grew up with that hard work ethic, that your actions don't always reap the same rewards. Yeah. And it may take years before you can see the repercussions of your actions, and you reap those rewards of all those late nights and all those long days.
I've got a take on this, and it might be, it's a little semantics maybe, but it might be just a little bit. So I think that, can I say millennials, Gen Z, and everything, I think they do work hard, but not for long. So here's what I'm saying. I think that everybody, if they see something they really want, they go work hard for it. But I'm asking a question about tenacity, long suffering, about grit. Like just like, like I'm going to grit it out. I'm going to grind it out, But I do see people, like you say, hit it quick and quit. Well, it didn't work out. I quit.
Yep.
So for me, I'm wondering, is it less about working hard and more about tenacity and perseverance?
I think it's instant gratification. I think if I work hard for a week, I expect that what I wanted is going to get done. And if it doesn't happen by Friday, I put in a long week of work, and then I'm done. I think it's instant gratification.
It's instant gratification, and it's a large sense of selfishness. Whereas, people may look at, well, I'm single, I'm 24 years old. Who do I need to be working hard for? You're trying to build a life for future family and everything. Well, yeah, but also, I also want that sense of like, I want my father to be proud of me. I want people around me to, respect me. Yeah. There's those other things that it's this, I feel like when you look at it in the selfish sense, it's, it's all about that instant gratification. And if it's not there, it's just me.
Yeah.
Right.
I think too, I know for me, the way I it could be this. I perceive work is the joy versus work is the means to the joy. And for me, like and this might be a perception. Like, well, where do you find joy? Like, I find joy in work. I find joy in producing. A part of that's my personality. I get that. But some people, their joy is in the fruit of the labor, but not that there's labor is part of the joy. I was talking about this last night, that when Adam was placed in the garden, in Genesis 2:15, he placed him in the garden and said, "Here's your job. You're going to till and tend. You're going to farm and shepherd," and that is a holy work. That's it. Yep. And people are like, well, that you just like, so labor is like joy, and the answer is, well, it could be, right? I guess it might be perspective. That's my take.
I mean, honestly, I kind of see it's definitely a perspective thing, but also, I feel like for me, I had to find love in what I do. And what I mean by that is, obviously growing up with having a dad like Chris Barnhill, you're going to work every kind of a job you can think of, before you're 18 years old. And even then, like everything from remodeling a house to pumping septic tanks, that was just part of it.
Right.
But it well formed this love and passion for racing. And it wasn't so much, I want to do this so I don't have to do that. It was so much of like the hard work that goes into being able to race. I found joy in my struggles. Yeah. I found joy in when things didn't go right with work. It sucks, but
let me ask you about that, because this might be a perspective that people may need to see a little insight on. I think when people look at, let's say like NASCAR, they see the team. they see the truck, they see the sponsors, they see, and the driver comes out, hops in the car, puts on the helmet, rides around for a couple hours, and gets the glory.
Yeah.
Your story is a whole lot more grassroots than that. And it seems to be like you're so closely connected to the work that you are in that whole process. And so tell a little bit more about that. Like, I don't think people know what goes into it, like, and why that, but that's part of the joy, right? That's part of the, like, the love for it, like, you know, turning a wrench, like there's a goodness in that. So tell people, tell us a little bit more about that. Cause I think some people's perception of being a NASCAR driver versus like even your walk is I don't think they see the highlight reel.
Yeah, no. And if they do see a highlight reel, it's at track. And I tell people all the time, 90% of the work is done before you get to the racetrack.
Sure.
The other 10% is unloading.
Yeah.
That's it. And it's crazy for people to think that, but it's the truth.
Yeah. And
you know, when I said blood, sweat, and tears, you know, in the shop, that's where it's at. And I didn't grow up with, you know, if I had anybody help, it was, you know, I had to go work in their shop and learn from them and everything like that. But there's so many different factors that I had to learn, you know, just the business side of the sport, the marketing side of it, but also the setup, the geometry. I was doing, you know, working with coilover bump stops and everything while still struggling to learn algebra. Like,
right.
How does that even work out?
Yeah, so you can like get the algebra class.
Yeah.
Like, can we just do some trig real quick?
Yeah. I'm like,
I've been in my shop working on some trigonometry.
Yeah, we're working on some cross weight and everything right now. Like, man, and it always blew my mind at how that stuff would just come a little bit easier. But I felt like I needed to learn that and everything because if anything, you know, I never had the finances and everything to move on my own and whatnot.
Right.
So I always prepare myself for any opportunity. And so when I do work with a team, when I do work with, you know, organization, you know, I'm an engineer's, you know, dream come true.
Right.
I know what they're talking about. I can tell them, you know, exactly which corner it is, or what I feel about this spring change, or this, that, and the other, and know all the parts and pieces that go into play with
You're
that.
giving input into the process versus just perspective of just driving the car.
Yes.
That's a healthy perspective. So I think being that closely tied to it, that you're kind of grounded in that. Here's what I love about that, because I know that especially when a man is connected to his work and he finds a joy and a love in the work and that it does produce fruit, and you get to enjoy the fruit of the labor, like your friends making fun of you because you have a Wikipedia page, that kind of stuff, you know. But when you're connected to the process, that's such a different life than I'm going to pop a few hours in at work and they're going to write me a check and then I'm going to go do what I want to. And like, you know, that's such a different, you know, it's a different life. And I get it. I know from my perspective, like come Sunday morning, the sermon, the work should be done. Like that should just be the outpouring of like the work that went in that week, right? Yeah. For 20 minutes there's 20 hours of thought that go into that, but people don't get to see, right?
Yeah.
But there's that love of the labor through that. Now, being 24, walking your faith out, is it just flat out question? Is that hard to do in the I would call the genre of work or just the atmosphere, the culture of motorsports? Is it hard to walk out your faith? Because every industry is different.
Yeah,
Let me ask about the industry of motorsports. What does faith look like in the industry of motorsports?
I will say over the past 5-6 years, on the national level, it's changed. I mean, we still do, you know, when I was racing the trucks, we still had our, you know, MRO chaplain and everything, and our, you know, we had a little short chapel service right after the drivers' meeting. You know, we have those things. You know, of course, we pray before the race and whatnot. But as far as living it out, the past few years on the national level, it's, you know, I hate to say it, NASCAR's kind of floated a little bit of a certain way, and so, like, if I won a race, and I'm sure they knowing their true audience, they can't really slap a wrist or anything like that. If I'm like, you know, thank God, praising Jesus and just preaching his name on national television, you know, there may be a good bit of kickback from that. Whereas usually you wouldn't have that.
So you've seen the change. You feel like, just not to name the entity itself, NASCAR, but just to say the motorsport, just say the public sports arena. It seems as if they're, I'm asking an athlete, I'm asking someone, and it's an athlete. You drive a race car, that is an athletic.
Drivers are athletes.
That is an athletic feat. So I'm asking the athlete, you've firsthand experienced that there is a bow to culture in that industry.
Yeah, but the culture that is preached on the internet and on the TV is not totally reflective of the true culture of the sport.
Right.
I know there's guys in the shops that they have, Bible studies. They have, meetings. They pray openly and everything like that. And this year, it started off pretty crazy when you have someone like William Byron doing the pre-race prayer of a race, or Michael McDowell doing that's openly speaking about their faith. And so even though we have that culture change that they say is happening, the true
it seems to be I'm the dude that looks at on the TV, right?
Yep.
Right? So, but it seems to me like that there are the dudes in the shop. There's the dudes who they're turning wrenches. They're working. They're a team. They're blood, sweat, and tears together. That seems to be this culture that's really going to be slow to change. Whereas the facade, the outward facing, the public facing. I'll say that I'm not going to put you in a spot to say this because you're a marketing guy. You're in a marketing company. You're marketing. There are certain things that happen in the sponsorship to bring in money. All right. And that's just a separate conversation than the dudes in the garage. Yeah. Who are just, man, I can I help you? Like how can we as a team, get better? So I think I could parse that out.
Sure. Well, and what you just mentioned makes up 85-90% of the sport.
Right.
That garage area. So it is interesting, and I think you get that a little bit anywhere. But that 10%, that might be what you see, but it's not the sport.
Could I say that the culture in the heart of NASCAR is on pit road?
Oh yeah.
Like do that.
I honestly wouldn't even say even that.
Not even that.
No.
Interesting.
Because a lot of your pit crew guys, they are like a different entity.
That's hired guns.
Yeah,
that's
hired
separate,
guns.
I'd forgotten about that.
Like even on your top tier teams, you have a pit department, and that's all they do is just they're not involved with the day-to-day operations.
These are former linebackers from the NFL.
Yeah. They are. Yeah.
So they're recruited for the athletics. I had not even thought about that. So when I say pit road, obviously. So that's a culture, right? But you would say like in the garage, like the team, the team
and then so you have in the garage, and I'd say a majority of the teams, the garage would make up a lot of that. But even a lot of the higher up teams, you have guys that all they do is load and travel with the team. Like they have at track duties, and now it's kind of changed a little bit since COVID and whatnot. But I'd say the culture is mainly not on pit road, but in that garage. In that garage, when you hear things on the news or you hear things being spoken about, motorsports as an entity on ESPN, it's not reflective at all in that garage area.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of parallels. We've had on another episode a conversation with TJ. He's a friend of ours, and he's a friend of the show. And he played, obviously, NFL. And I've got other friends that played in NFL, and they say the same thing. Bro, in the locker room, it's like it's different than what you see in the news. It's like it's at practice. Like we're a team. We're professionals. We got families to feed. Yeah. Like we're trying to take care of each other. But what you see is like that's not the real.
Yeah.
There's a beauty in the idea though of that. Like it's very just to kind of tie it back to what we were talking about earlier. Racing is very familial. Feels like more than a lot of other sports where it's like you're growing up and you're 3 years old, 4 years old, but you're around your family, right? You're doing this around people who, and I know every sport is like that, but it just seems like motorsports has this way to connect your circle, if that's what you want to put it, more than any other sport. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of other ones that you could argue, but motorsports particularly, is that something you've noticed where it's, man, not only am I growing in my motorsports career, but in turn, it's family. This is what I do.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's a lot of it kind of goes to that point of people know the struggle. People whether they know the full story. I have guys that, I've raced with for years. Do they know the full story of Bryant Barnhill, that I'm, a lone soul working out of a, old race shop?
Yep.
Yeah.
No. They only see that at the racetrack, but over time you have people that they come to know you but respect you, but at the end of the day, whether you're a big team operations or you're a one-man lone soldier, you treat each other with the same respect, but also if you need something, you let me know. And same goes both ways. And it's just this unspoken, thing between everybody, and it's just like, it's just always been that way of you have your family, your biological family, and then you have your racing family. Yeah. And it doesn't matter if you're over on the West Coast or if you're up north, it's all the same.
Give me a call.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's something about that.
Yeah, there is. And I'll say this about Bryant, is that like I've known you for a long time, watch you grow up, know your family. Our families have been close, but at watching you grow too. I mean, and watch you invest into yourself. I mean, you came with us on a mountain retreat up True North last year. Was that?
It was 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah,
they all run together after a while. About 2 years ago. But just watching you take ownership of your own life, taking ownership of your faith, and you're 22 years old at that point, and you're there with us. It was like 40 other dudes. We're in a mountain retreat hiking, and we're investing in ourselves and trying to, like, how can I be the best version of myself? And so, I mean, that's what I appreciate about you, is that I respect your racing career and that going on, but I mean, my hat's off to a dude who's 24 years old, who's walking out his faith in an arena where that you have leverage, and you're using that, I would say, in a way that's in your own way, right? And so I respect that. I respect you for that.
I appreciate that.
I have an off-the-wall question. So
I've got three, but start with your. Go ahead.
Well, before you say that, I will say, from that True North experience, you laid out the best way for me to ever categorize people in my life. Really? And it is something that I have told, not just people in the racing industry, I have told my friends to consider it, and that's your house method. Whereas you have people in the foyer,
the living room,
in the living room, and then kitchen, and at your dinner table.
Well, let's break that down for just a second.
I would say,
because obviously some dudes listening like have no idea. So we talk about our circles of influence. We talk about how every person that you meet is not at the same level of relationship or should have access, and we got to consider that. And we do that at least in three primary circles. I could argue that there's a lawn, and then there's the curb in the street where the trash is. But so at the core, you know what I mean. So imagine a bullseye, and let's start with the outer ring, the third ring. Call that the foyer. And you got some people that in the foyer of your life, you know them by name, or you might be meeting them by name. There's not a lot of furniture at the foyer. It's just a door. You don't sit there. You don't ask, hey man, how's your friend who's recently divorced, how's the divorce going? You don't ask that question there. It's the wrong question at the wrong place. But then you have that living room environment. You got people in your life that you sit around with, you have conversations with, you share your life with, at a certain level. And then you got that kitchen table friend who have that, that's a smaller ring, 4 or 5 people. I use the analogy, if there's a door at the foyer, there's a chair or a couch in the living room, we call it the kitchen table. And we talk about having refrigerator rights. And that there's only probably on one hand that you could count that men have refrigerator rights. I mean, they could walk in your house right now, open up your fridge, take what they want, and you'd be like, no problem. Oh, yeah. Right?
Yeah.
And we saw that was true. We don't make this up. This is Jesus. Jesus had Peter, James, and John, his inner 3, then the other 9 who made up the 12, and then the 7, the 200, the thousands. Yeah. So that's what we're talking about there, and that's, I guess, a little freebie for the episode.
And also, one thing I want to add to that is, in the way I also explain it to a lot of my friends and people that ask me certain things like that, is when we talk about the living room. The living room for me is I picture a TV. People are there in your life when something's going on. Yeah. They're there when something's happening.
Yeah.
They're
That's
closer
cool.
to the door than they are to your kitchen table.
Huh.
But when you got something going on, and there's other people around it, those are the people that are in and out of your life, but they don't hold the same value as the people that are going to sit down with you at the kitchen table and really talk about what's going on.
That's rad, dude.
That's great.
I like that. I might throw that into the book.
Yeah, that's interesting. And for someone, you have a lot of people, you do what you do, they're going to want kitchen table rights, inevitably, especially our generation, our age, right? You want those. And I guess a question for both of you, but how have you figured out how to say, man, I'm going to make this, there's a marker, because I know these people really probably don't belong on my kitchen table. They might want to be at my kitchen table, but I know in my heart of hearts they don't belong there. Is it difficult to make that decision to say, hey, I'm going to keep you in the living room, and then kind of after I want, like, how do we do that practically? How do you say, hey, I'm not going to say this out loud, but you're not a kitchen table person, you know? So I'm curious your thoughts on that.
For me, it's their actions. You know, I've had a lot of people in my life tell me one thing after another, but your actions over time speak where you belong. Yeah. And that's not for me to put you in your place. That's you putting your own worth, you know, in your own place. And a lot of people don't really like that, but it's the truth of it. When your actions are when you're somebody who says one thing, but you can't come through for me. If you're somebody who, when I got something going on, you know, and that's why I like that house kind of method, because it's the best and easiest reputation for, you know, that visual of people's actions. Yeah. You know, in your life.
So you think through that regularly. That's that's a thought process.
It's honestly weird. Ever since I heard that, like, I at least probably think about it once a week. You know, when somebody does something to me or says something or whatever, you know, the house can be rearranged.
Comes into play.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's difficult to do. It's difficult because sometimes, especially personality by personality, a lot of us might want, let's bring 20 people to the kitchen table. We can't do that, though.
No.
What are ways, and I'm just thinking just generally, right, that thought process of, let's take the foyer out of the equation. Let's take living room, kitchen. Because you make it into the living room, you're a part of my life. How do we navigate the balance of living room versus kitchen table? Because that kitchen table area that's special. That's reserved. How do we make it? How do we make it reserved?
I think that longevity plays into it once. And I'm adding. You said actions, right? Yes. So they're going to filter themselves with their actions. Can I trust them? That's right. Is there consistency between what you say and what you do? And if there's some paradox there, then I don't trust you. So there's I concur with that. So longevity, just you know, presence over time equals trust. That's my rubric. It's the formula. Presence divided by time equals trust. And you the more time and the more presence, the more trust. You know. But so there's that. So there's that. But then there's also. There might be another rubric. I throw this one out there. The guys that I call, I was talking with my, I got a counselor that I talk to. Is a guy out of California. He's a clinical psychologist. He also he gives me a place to unpack my mind, and that's helpful for me, which is something I hope dudes would do. Like find someone to talk to. Yeah. And so he's a guy that I talk to, and he asked me that question this week. He said, he's kind of looking at my life. He's like, let's check in on like your family, your relationship with God. And he was like, tell me about your friends. And he asked me that same question. And he said, how do you choose those dudes? Right. And same question. So your question, clinical psychologist, asked, and I said, well, there's about 4 to 5 guys that I trust with my wife and my wallet when I'm not around. That's my rubric.
Interesting.
That's my, because, okay, so swap that out. So let's say, whatever is the most dear to you, do you would you entrust it to them without you being there to influence your decision? Yeah, that's the rubric for me.
As a 24-year-old, I'm just thinking through that in my head, right? The wife and wallet, right? Not married, not married.
Yeah. So interchange that. Yeah. Interchange that.
For us, it'd be, you know, probably money.
Sure.
Like, let's be honest. For our generation, for our age bracket right now,
I guess
it
when I
would be
say
money.
wallet, I date myself a bit, right? So
No,
yeah.
My
you know,
Venmo account.
your Venmo account.
whoa,
Yes,
whoa.
yeah,
I'm not trying to catch the charges. Okay.
yeah, exactly.
But it's interesting, right? I mean, like how
Sure.
how do we navigate that? Because what a great school of thought, but also like my brain just runs, right? Like when he's talking about that, I think about, you know, what's near and dear to me. How many friends do I really have that I can say, man, I'm not even going to be in the room, not going to be around, but I don't care. That's hard. I don't have many that come to mind. I don't know about you, but
Yeah, for me, it's, you know, this whole path of, you know, moving away from here and didn't really have a lot of friends up that way in North Carolina where I was living for 5-6 years. And, you know, it was very, very small hand. And those were not people that I would consider sitting at my dining room table.
Yeah.
And I hate to say that because that also puts a picture of a very type of like a loneliness, you know, because a lot of times it is lonely because you find yourself with not having that person in your life. And, you know, when I moved back here, I got reintroduced, you know, it all kind of worked out in a way, whereas people came home at the right time and we were all just kind of met back here and found some new friends that also, you know, I would consider dining room table friends that I never would expect to be that.
Sure.
yeah.
But
And I think that's what's important to you. Said something so crucial. It's going to be in flux. Like you said, you rearrange the house, you rearrange the furniture, you rearrange your friends. That's life. You have people coming out. I think maybe a more holistic way to answer your question is so I could say, who do you trust with your wife and your wallet? Who do you trust with your bank account? Okay. Or here's another way to look at it. If these dudes at my table, right, we share a mission and we're on the same mission, could they carry out the mission if I was sidelined?
Without compromising it.
Without compromising the mission? Or would they take all of our time, effort, and energy? For a little small example, 2 years ago, we were building a coffee bar. So I launched a new coffee bar, a church campus relaunch, all kinds of stuff on Easter Day. I got sick with COVID 3 days before Easter. 5 days for Easter.
Which, by the way, is the worst timing possible for a pastor.
I missed Easter for the first time in my life. Sunday, like that wasn't an option growing up. All right, I missed Easter. I literally spent a year building a campus and a new facility, coffee bar. This whole thing we're launching all at once, and I was literally COVID. I almost died from COVID. A lot of people don't know that, but it was like I don't remember about 3 days, but I was sidelined, and I was laying there thinking to myself, have I invested in enough people and the right people to carry out the mission? Now think about that. You're flat on your back. It's Easter Sunday. You're a pastor. And you're launching a new campus, a new facility, a new coffee bar. Like we were doing this whole big launch at once.
Yeah.
And I'm laying flat on my back going, do I got the right people? Okay. So for me, the mission, what mission you're on, and imagine if you're sidelined, could they carry out the mission without you influencing them and being there?
Yeah.
It's almost like putting yourself in that perspective and being like, man,
Yeah.
it shapes things really fast.
I tell you what it will do pretty quickly. It will make you really, have I invested in the right people? And have I really invested people that will carry out the mission without me? And so if I'm not there, like one monkey don't stop the circus. Like, you know, like will it outlive me? So I think that's a real life example for me of like how to answer that question.
Topic for another day, but it's like what really matters.
Yeah, what really matters.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, we could spend hours on that, but I mean, what really matters?
Yeah.
When you get down to it, and that's like, I feel like 24, and we're going off, and I'll steer it here in a little bit, but it's one of those things where I think about often, and I'm glad I do, but it's like, what does really matter? Like, our generation has no concept of that, in my opinion. I don't think we get what matters. I don't think we have an understanding of what truly matters, and maybe it's not just maybe it's just the nature of being 24. But I think it's hard to just really sit and think about, all right, am I doing things on a daily basis that I'm going to be thankful I did when I'm 80?
Yeah.
That's a really hard thing to sit and to do.
Well, here's a question. Let me ask any 24-year-old dude this question. Can you see yourself doing what you're doing right now when you're 55?
Start with you.
I was going to say, do you want the real answer for that?
Yeah. You see what I'm saying? I mean, it's a legit question.
Right,
Because, okay, am I doing what matters? Well, I don't know that any 24-year-old person is actually doing something that they're going to be doing 6 years from now.
Sure. Yeah, when I'm
right?
30.
So, when I'm 30, right? So, I mean, it's a bit of a fair question to throw back and be you know, is what you're doing right now something you see you're doing?
Yeah.
You know, when
I was 20 years old, you know, going to school at Belmont Abbey up in North Carolina, I was there on scholarship, but main reason why I only chose that school was just so I could be closer to work. And I'll never forget sitting down with my professor who was head of my scholarship, and he was like, "Why are you here?"
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that I'm like, you know, I started telling him, because you have to tell them everything what you're doing work-wise outside the school and everything. And so, you know, I started really thinking about it. I'm like, I can always come back to this. But the opportunities I have right now, I'm not going to have. I may not have in 5 years' time or 2 years' time. You know, and so I feel like for us, it's, you know, we're doing what we are right now. But for me, I've always had that 5-year picture. And when it comes to that 10, 15-year picture, when I look at that 5 years will absolutely be a part of whatever I'm doing 10, 15 years from now. And I feel like what I'm doing right now, you know, I haven't completely thrown in the towel to do some national level stuff and whatnot. I still, you know, this year I want to do some Xfinity and truck racing, but, you know, I'm not going to be planning on doing that when I'm 30. You know, and that's just something for me. What I'm doing now with working on the ranch and, you know, working at the race shop and running the small regional team, that's something I can manage that when I'm 30 years old. You know, and even then, it's something that I'm planning for in the future. If I gotta lay that groundwork. I can't just come in and expect the house to be sturdy when I get there.
Yeah, we got another episode down the line about legacy. And we're going to unpack some of those things about legacy, which is really what we're talking about.
Yeah, it is.
You know, but I will say that it was a bit of a setup question. Like, no one really knows what you're going to be doing 5 years from now. Right? No one knows that. I know that my life has been this kind of a ping pong or pinball game.
I feel like every time I talk to you, I'm like, do you really know what you're doing next week? Like
next week, I was just going to say that. Yeah, right?
Next week. I'm like, I can't tell you what I wore yesterday, but you know,
I'm here right now.
I can tell you that I'm doing what I'm doing right now. And I'm locked on mission, and I'm fulfilling a greater mission. But you know, it reminds me of this. You marry the mission, you date the model. All right. So you marry the mission, you date the model. The model may change, and the model may come and go. Like what I'm doing right now may be something different 2 years from now, but the mission doesn't change, right?
Spend time with it, see what happens.
Yeah, and so there's a little bit of that. So now I'm gonna go back, toss it back to you. You had a question.
Yeah, I'll let you wrap up with some good stuff. This is a question. How much weight do you lose during a race?
We get to ask these good questions, right? Wrap up with the good questions.
Yeah, but like I'm so fascinated by that because I have heard ranges that are absolutely absurd.
Well, I'm gonna be honest with you. If it tells you anything, I did not grow up racing at the local level and stuff like that. And I mean, these are long races in the heat of a Myrtle Beach summer. Yeah, I didn't have a helmet blower. I didn't even know when I got in the truck series, I didn't even know the truck I was in had a helmet blower until I think like my third race, and they were like, "Don't you want to hook up?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, I would like that. Yeah, that'd be nice." But typically in the summertime, you know, hot, long summer race, I'll lose anything around, 3 to 4 pounds.
That's nuts.
I mean, in a long race, I know this past November race, which was a 250 lap race, I lost, I probably would have lost more if it was a lot hotter, but I lost about 5-6 pounds.
And that's while hydrating.
Yeah.
I mean, you're hydrating. You're replenishing.
So that's about a pound of water. I mean, a gallon of water weighs 8 pounds. So if you lose a half a gallon of water and sweat, which is completely doable, it's like cutting weight for wrestling.
That's right.
Yeah. I've done that. I cut weight. I lost I had an hour to make weight for weightlifting one time, and so I had to cut weight. I had like 3 pounds to cut, in an hour. It was beautiful, but it's possible. Yeah. And I know that. It's horrid.
Oh, it's the person you see jump in the car at the beginning of the race and the person you see climb out,
totally different.
Yes,
totally.
Yeah.
And honestly, if it's been a rough day behind the wheel and I've been working way too hard, I look dead.
How much time does it take you after a race to be like, all right, you can come talk to me now? Like
honestly, I'm pretty good at just like hopping out, but there are some times where I'm just like, I just need to sit down.
Yeah.
Like that, or I just need to like walk around and just kind of like
get your equilibrium back.
Yeah, like
your homeostasis is out after that amount of G-force constantly for that time.
Yeah,
you really have to recalibrate. I mean, it's different.
That, and you just have like you go from your heart rate being up consistently for so long, and I've managed to keep my heart rate down a good bit when I'm behind the wheel, but you can't do but so much when that adrenaline is that high.
Yeah,
and you go from that to you're done.
Yeah. All right, so one other question. I'll throw this out there. Why does Dale Earnhardt Jr. talk so weird?
Oh man,
he does though.
He does.
I'm scared to answer this because he's been coming to Florence
I know.
a lot.
So I saw this the other day. You're hanging out with Dale Jr. and I laughed to myself. And I texted you something.
Yeah.
And what I wanted to text you was like record his
record his voice,
like
next race, I'm just gonna go up to him like, "Hey,
Scott,
Scott, it's just gonna be a recording. It's not gonna go into the video. It's just like I just want you to just talk.
Yeah,
just don't tell him anything. Just say talk."
It's a good question because it's so distinct.
Oh,
You know when Dale Jr.'s talking.
Yeah, it's like because I was listening to interview him and a brother, one of Dale's sons, and their voices like so I'm trying to remember his name.
Carrie.
Yeah, so Carrie.
Carrie
I'm listening to Carrie Earnhardt, and I'm like, okay, that voice matches the face. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And then when Dale Jr. speaks, I'm like,
oh, it does not put two and two together.
It's not a voice that seems like it should come out of that body. It's weird.
What's crazy is like, and I didn't think this would ever really happen, but the past two races of having Dale at the racetrack, and it's been nice because it's like I didn't expect to. I just kind of there's a lot of times when you're at the racetrack, especially a big race, where there's guys I know and we may not even see each other, but a little bit driver intros or meeting or whatever, like that's it. But no, like he was very wanting to come up and talk to me, like we were going through tech and. Like, when you're just like, hey, how's it going? Like, expecting the other man to just keep walking. Yeah. I'm not engaging in conversation. I'm just being courteous. So then they stop and turn and talk.
What I'm going to do is so we had Corbin Collective on the car at the last Florence race. I'm going to subtitle it. I'm just going to put Corbin Collective on there. And we're going to take we have like a subtitle that says Intentional Adventure. Yeah. And it says, Dale Jr. sounds weird.
Yeah.
And see how long it takes him to notice.
And then just be like, in quotes, like, or like in like parentheses or whatever, just put like, read this in Junior's voice.
Yes.
And just have people really start to think about it. Because what's funny is like, the more I've been around him and stuff like, and I haven't been around him a huge amount, but just that little bit, all I hear is, "Hey man, hey man," like, like it's just a distinctive, "Hey man,"
and be a like great ringtone, like a text tone.
Yeah, oh my gosh, I would love that. Like just a "Hey man, hey man."
Oh. So anyway, I threw that in there because I always get a kick out of that. But man, I appreciate you coming on today, having a conversation. I appreciate you and how you're walking out your faith and. I'm not trying to put men on a pedestal, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's the danger. That's not what this show is about. It's about people being real enough to come in and be like, hey, man, I'm trying to walk this out. I don't have it all figured out, but this is what I'm doing right now, and I appreciate what God's doing in your life. I appreciate your family. They mean a lot to me personally. And there's some people you mentioned that I just want to give a nod to. You talked about your mom earlier on, like calling you out.
Yeah. Like
your mom is someone who I refer women to her for counseling at times. I'm like, hey, you need to talk to Catherine. And so like I respect your mom and I know that we're a product of strong women. And so I acknowledge that the women in our lives who help us become that. So I don't try to build men up on a pedestal. I say, hey, we're just in this together, walking it out, and we're standing on the shoulders of some pretty awesome people. So I appreciate you coming on today, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me. It's always a good time when I get to come out here and do this, and honestly, it means a lot to me. Not just a talk shop with racing and whatnot, but also kind of get to talk about some things that are just rolling through your head and get to see other perspective of some things that go on in my life that I don't completely see the full perception of. So that I appreciate it.
Well, you're not allowed to leave until you read one of these books cover to cover. That's the rule we're having for guests now.
You have to read a book
I think I'm
before
going to
you
go
leave.
with that picture book of the antique.
Okay.
Well, that's fine. That's good. Bryant, thank you so much. Thank you for listening. This has been Rugged Wisdom. Scott Johnson. I'm Joe Widra. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. See you next time.